for the near future, that will be absolutely impressive. So I got a lot of questions with as far as the CeeDee Lamb and the Brandon Aiyuk situations, but a former pro NFL wide receiver who's been there, done that, spent 6 seasons in the league. I'm excited for this one because this is what we've been waiting for in the last couple of days. So joining us, former pro Anthony Armstrong joining us. Before we get into, the Commanders talk and multiple others, let's talk about the receiving situations between CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Aiyuk. So CeeDee Lamb, I've been saying about this with the Cowboys that I feel like CeeDee Lamb, you got to pay him because he's a part of your offense. He's what makes the offense viable. If you don't pay him, and I'm crossing my fingers because this is an injury away from this just being a disaster. But if you don't pay him and he suffers an injury, I mean, Anthony, I'd be kind of raising an eyebrow like, what am I doing here? If I ain't got a contract that's going to protect me and such. So when you look at the CeeDee Lamb situation from a wide receiver standpoint, I mean, how do you think like this kind of goes through CeeDee Lamb's head with this whole thing?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, CeeDee Lamb is going to get paid. I mean, it's deservedly so. He takes up such a big chunk of what that offense does. He helps that team get the ball down the field. And just with the recent, the retirement of Michael Gallup and just so much uncertainty out there, CeeDee Lamb has to be at the top of the list of what Jerry Jones goes and addresses. And with Tua getting paid, Dak Prescott is another guy who you can see his salary slowly ticking up. So there's decisions to be made in Dallas. But I think CeeDee is one that you need to really consider putting it under the fold as soon as possible because top flight receivers like that, they don't show up everywhere. I mean, you saw how the Vikings, they went ahead and got J.J. McCarthy after letting Kirk Cousins go ahead and walk, but they paid Justin Jefferson. So you can always make a play at that quarterback position a little bit later, but CeeDee has to get his money.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny because CeeDee Lamb almost has nearly identical numbers to Justin Jefferson. And it's just like that wide receiving core, from 2020 was absolutely ridiculous. A lot of these wide receivers, they really panned out. And I mean, unfortunately for Jalen Reagor, it wasn't the case, but a lot of them, they've hit. So, I mean, the Cowboys, with this decision, with those three in mind, with CeeDee, Dak, and Micah, it's going to be a handful for Jerry Jones and for the rest of this organization to really pan this out. So, so I think with Brandon Aiyuk's situation, because a lot of this buzz with training camp and all the rest of it is he obviously wants to get his contract. And I understand that. I know that like we're in an age where there's new money that's coming in. And a lot of it too, it's been kind of changing the way that we see the NFL now. It's more pro offense. But with Brandon Aiyuk, what's a unique situation is he came in as a first-round pick, and then he's been a number 2 since then, but he has developed. He has very much produced the numbers. I would make an argument. I think he's definitely doubled the total once Brock Purdy was their quarterback. So now there's Trent Williams that's now starting to chirp, and he wants a new contract. He's not up in practice. So this Brandon Aiyuk situation, this is very unique to me, in my opinion.
I think that it's a similar scenario. I mean, you mentioned it. Aiyuk has improved his statistics over the past 4 seasons, most recently being 1,300 yards, all-pro selection. When you're in that upswing of your career, you deserve to get paid top dollar. And with the price being set from Justin Jefferson and all these other receivers, Nico Collins and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddles, they're getting paid. So Aiyuk is up next. Thought it would have maybe been a trade heading out to Washington, but it seems like they're going to probably get something done. And John Lynch, they're going to play a little bit of hardball. They're going to have a little bit of back and forth. And eventually, I think Aiyuk will get signed up there in San Francisco. I don't see him really moving now. But with Trent, Trent is still playing at a high level. And I think he's done this before. He plays a couple of years. He's still considered one of the best in the game. He wants to go ahead and get his pay raise as deservedly so. So he's going to get handled too. But I think both of those guys are going to strike gold out there in San Fran.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're a very smart organization because they've ended up drafting 2 wide receivers. One of them I know starting in the PUP list with a hamstring injury, Ricky Pearsall, but hopefully he does pan out. But they've got options. And even when they have Jawan Jennings, who really came in the clutch, especially in the postseason, he's another one of those viable options that really helps out to kind of bail out some of those dangerous situations that the 49ers really find them in some of these games. So the new look Commanders now, this is interesting. So let's start with Jayden Daniels. My thing with this is that you get a new coach, you get a new GM, and you get him potentially a new franchise quarterback. Jayden Daniels, in my opinion, I think he's like the Commanders at one point flirted with the idea of potentially bringing in a Lamar Jackson. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I feel like they've got a Lamar Jackson-esque type player who's very elusive. He's got a very good, accurate arm. I do believe that with Dan Quinn there, he's going to build a little bit more grit in him. Because if you watched a couple college games, he was getting lit up pretty hard in the SEC. And so I think kind of building that toughness for him to keep control of the football and keeping possession on their side. What do you make of Jayden Daniels? Because I think this is a position the Commanders want to win now. Like they don't want to wait next year or the year after. They want to potentially make their mark this year.
The good thing is that they're not putting a lot of pressure on this kid because we've been down that road back in 2012 when RG3 was drafted. I mean, he was exalted as the savior of the city and of the team. And there was a lot of pressure put on his shoulders. This is a completely different game plan. They're sitting back and they're, hey, right now, Jayden Daniels is the number 2. And they're going to have him earn his spot on that number 1. But I think the beautiful thing about how they've built the organization around Jayden Daniels is that you've got a strong defense led by Bobby Wagner, with potentially strong defense. You're trying to see what Joe Witt and Dan Quinn can get out of that crew. But then on offense, it's a lot of veterans that are surrounded. And there's one question at that left tackle, but I think Brandon Coleman will pan out. You have players around him where it doesn't have to be all Jayden making superhero plays. You got Terry McLaurin on the outside. You still got Jahan Dotson. You got a very reliable Zach Ertz. You got Austin Eckler in the backfield with Brian Robinson. So you have choices. I don't expect to see the guy throw the ball 40, 45 times a game. I think he's going to make good decisions and run when he needs to. And instead of taking those hits like he did in the SEC, you got to slide, man. Get down and do not take any unnecessary punishment.
I always say this all the time. I'm like, in the off season, go to like a baseball game or even go to like a baseball practice because these guys can get in anytime that they want to. And ask them, hey, I want to learn to basically steal a base. That helps a bit. You go and steal second, steal third. If you develop into right now what we're seeing in a sensation like Ellie De La Cruz, the possibilities are all there. And you will be the controlling type franchise quarterback who's composed, he's not pressurized, and he takes control of every situation in front of him. So I did a whole recap of right now the top 100 players. Now, I know it's voted by the players, but I'll be honest with you, Anthony. When I look at Terry McLaurin, this is what people do not kind of like realize is that Terry McLaurin doesn't truthfully get a whole lot of love from a lot of NFL fans. To me personally, when it comes to an offense, Terry is there when you need the catches. He's there when you need those scores. And so I understand putting him at 97th, but I just feel like he is a very strong part of this Commanders offense. And so when I look at a guy like that, and even from the time when you played in your career, like you've been a part of this organization. When you look at Terry's situation, this is a guy that really can help out, especially with a young quarterback in Jayden Daniels that could really pave the way for this offense to be successful this year.
Oh, 100%. Like you have to have 17 get active in this offense if you want to have success this year. 4 straight years, getting over 1,000 yards, right around 1,100 most recently. And we all thought last year was going to be a lot bigger for everybody, and it wasn't. But Terry was still a strong part of it. And with Cliff Kingsbury coming in, Brian Johnson coming in as well, you know that there's going to be some creativity in the offense, right? And that's one thing that you hear from those coaches is that they're willing to be creative. They're willing to take some coaching and some ideas from different players and positions to come up with some things that are going to be really special. So, I mean, I would love to see Terry get good 12 targets a game, easy. Just start him out, give him the ball, give him the attention that a CeeDee Lamb gets, give him the type of targets that Justin Jefferson gets. And I think that you'll get much more production from him, but he's also a selfless player. He understands where he fits inside of an offense and how it's going to affect everybody else. And the main thing is coming up with W's. You mentioned that this team wants to win right now. I mean, I think that at the best, they could find their way into that 6-7 position in the playoffs. So it's definitely something that they're going to be reaching for, but Terry McLaurin is going to be a big part of it if they want to get there.
And I will tell you this, because in the offseason, I mean, when Dan Quinn got hired, Dan Quinn loves his defense, and he picked up a lot of really good pieces that I think really can help out to build this team from the ground up. But I'll tell you what, though, this ain't no ordinary guys either. These are some very good, positive locker room guys. I mean, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. I mean, these guys are very important when it comes to you build the young group and you lead them in the right direction to where this team can now win in the trenches. What do you think of that? And how important is that to have veteran guys who have been there, done that? And when it comes to rookies who come in that are really kind of seeking for advices or seeking to really shape their skill set, these are important guys to really have in the locker room and even on the field.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I've been saying that they needed to have a leader that was going to close the door and kick the coaches out and address the team and address the defense. And that's what you get in Bobby Wagner. I think it was Mike Clay had a list from ESPN where Washington has the top linebacking core rated in the league. Now, when you add in Louvu and Wagner, you get leadership from a Hall of Fame player from Bobby Wagner. He's get to teach these young guys how to handle themselves, to correct the defensive line. And the defensive line is still stacked. So you can't sleep on the fact that you have John Allen and Deron Payne that are still up there that are going to cause havoc. Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Farrell, those guys they all understand they have to work together, especially in the Dan Quinn defense to get to the quarterback. So I think you have the right type of players who understand what their role is going to be and understand that the coaches are putting them in position to be successful. Like, they're not just throwing you out there just to see you flounder. They're going to put you in a specific position for a reason because you shown to be successful at that. And if it comes up with you getting a sack or making a play, then that's what you're there for. That's what you'll do. But ultimately, that linebacking core, bringing in Bobby Wagner, it's the leadership that you need, a more vocal leader. Right. I mean, yeah. Terry McLaurin is a leader. And you see him speak from time to time, but he's not one that he's going to be yelling at the team every single week. So I think having Bobby come in, the respect that he holds in this league from everybody around, they're going to listen when he speaks, and it will show up on the field.
Two more questions here before we move on for you. So as a former wide receiver, and what we're looking at from a receiver standpoint from back then in your playing career and what we're looking at right now, I'll be honest, this game has definitely changed. I think a part of that is because, look, we're all guilty of it. We got fantasy football leagues. We'd love to see our guys really pop off with, 40-point weeks one week, and then all of a sudden we trump over and we win our championships and such. So we're so pro offense where it's about the quarterback, it's about the weapons, and then not to mention, too, a viable offensive line to protect their franchise quarterback. But then there's also the head coach that comes into play. So when you look at, from your playing career, what the wide receivers, because you played with a lot of really good wide receivers back then in that group, from what we've seen from the receivers back then and to what we're seeing now, where, I mean, in America, we deal with two things: inflation and recession. When new money comes in, rises, like the stock starts rising up. How have you kind of broken this down from the receiver stock? Because money is just piling on them. And I think people are starting to realize, hey, they're no longer just the icing on the cake. This is what also helps to build your offense to score up 25 plus points, right?
Oh yeah, they are starting to be that second or third most important player on the field. I mean, the ball gets out of the quarterback's hands so quickly, and they've obviously just shown that they are going to be the most important position on the field. Left tackle is important, but if you don't score points, then you're not going to get people in the stands. So, I mean, being a wideout now, it's like, man, that sure would be nice to come up on one of those contracts, even one of those, them 2 year, $20-something million that they had going on out there, but. Uh, Now the guys are so talented. The offenses are so unique in how they get you open in various situations. I mean, you mentioned Mike McDaniels earlier. Like I love what he's done in Miami and working with Tua and some of the fastest players in the league. He's found a way to create a Ferrari of an offense. So Ferrari's still got to drive in the snow, so they'll figure that part out when they go into the playoffs. But ultimately, the receivers in this league now, they are really ultimate game changers. The best are the ones that can score from anywhere on the field, and that's why they're getting paid mightily.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like at the same time, they're showing an importance that like helps with the quarterback build. That's why like we're seeing teams like the Giants when they drafted Malik Neighbors, like they needed to have that star receiver there in the making to what can really move the needle for the offense. And even for some, like I mean, that's why I think I'm hoping Chicago. I think Chicago is going to be built for success. They bring in all these veterans just to help that rookie quarterback to assure he can succeed. And
Yeah.
so it's really amazing to me what the state of the league has really looked into over the last few years, ever since I've started watching it at 6 years old. So, a final question, and I've asked this from many of Commanders content creators, from Rio Robinson, Rambling with Rio, and really good friend of mine, Lake Lewis Jr. as well. So when I think of the Commanders, I feel so happy for Commander fans because, and even when you played in this organization, you've seen it. You've been like in that atmosphere. When Dan Snyder was the owner there, like it was just insanity. And like you could tell the culture was hard. And at the same time, the fan bases, it just felt like it was not really kind of guaranteeing the fan bases like, hey, like you come out to practices, and you're there in the moment and you're trying to build the fan base very strong. And then the players, they kind of felt a certain way too. But now with the Josh Harris group and with Josh Harris himself, Commander fans got to feel so good about it because there's a bright future in front of them. And I feel so happy about that. In the best words you can possible, from being in this organization, from what it was then, and to what you're seeing in the atmosphere now, this is a completely different culture now, right?
Man, you talk about it being a different culture. There was an article that came across on social media on X earlier, and it says Washington Commanders have the NFL's happiest fans based on AI selfie analysis. And I got into the replies and I asked the author, I says, where do these selfies span from? He says they're all from the 2023 season. Look, Snake, if you go all the way back to when the sale happened in last July, it's been all hugs and Hallmark cards for Commanders fans. Like, yes, the on-field performance hasn't been there, but everybody has had this excitement and positivity about the future because that Dan Snyder era had ended and the Josh Harris era is now in full effect. Then as you got into the offseason and Adam Peters builds the coaching staff and the team on the field, and then the draft, you're hitting on so many players, like things are really looking up. And it's one of those things where it's a quiet confidence, right? They're not beating the drum saying we're going to beat Dallas and take down Philly and all of that. It's just a quiet confidence. Hey, we're going to operate, do things the right way in Ashburn and handle business on the field. But yeah, they're happy. They're happy. The Commanders faithful are really in good spirits, and they deserve it too, man. They deserve it. They've been around. They're loyal as all get out, and I appreciate them. So that's why I'm out here creating Commanders content.
And you are creating some fiery content, man, that just gets everybody pumped up. Training camp is here. NFL season ready to roll, man. I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to see what this new look Commanders team is. I think this is a team a lot of people don't take too seriously. But when you see the strides in the first 5-6 weeks and they give me something that is very much an eye popper, man, I'm like, I'm telling you, I've got the proof from here from a lot of people who's been talking about him and been real with as far as the build and what this group is going to put out on the field. Anthony, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's an absolute honor up on here. And, I just get so excited when I have former players on here that share the experience, that share with the journey road, where they started, what the grind was like. And then now, and I mean, it's awesome. You're in this position now, being a part of the Commanders organization, creating the best content, man. I mean, it's so good to really just give back, man. I talked with James Canada. He's giving back with the Buccaneers, and talking with Rod Smith, he's giving back with the Panthers and Patriots. Like, it just makes me feel so good that there's players that even if they're not on the field, they're still contributing any way they can.
Oh, absolutely, man. I definitely appreciate the fans, and y'all check me out on the Believe in Commanders podcast. I got some new stuff that I'm working up, so I'll keep that content rolling, man. Y'all jump in and tap in with me.
Absolutely, man. Hey, enjoy the Friday, enjoy the weekend, and we will definitely see you soon by kickoff for those